The Eden Prairie Arts Center is a place where creativity thrives. From toddlers to older adults, beginners to advanced, all are welcome in the spacious facility where you can explore, play, and learn. The 5,400 square foot building was donated to the city in 2008 by the family of Roger Sampson, an artist who built the center as a studio and gathering space for other artists. The ceramic studio features 8 pottery wheels, electric kilns, and support equipment. Participants create hand-built sculptures,
Good evening. I'm calling the Monday, August 9, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. And again, thanks for your patience while we work through some technical difficulties. First item on the agenda tonight is the approval of tonight's agenda. Looking at the sign-up sheets, it appears that most people in the audience are here for Johnson Ridge. I'd like to entertain if someone would maybe make a motion to take that public hearing on first.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make the motion to reflect a change in the agenda, take item number 5B for Johnson Ridge and move it up in front of 5A. For the Duck Lake Trail project.
And motion to approve the agenda as amended then?
Otherwise, yes, please amend the motion to approve the agenda as noted.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion for an amended agenda from Commissioner Farr and a second for Commissioner Kirk. All those in favor of approving the agenda as moved, as amended, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, agenda is passed. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting held on Monday, June 28th, 2021. Do you have any requests for changes or concerns about the minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right. Motion, Commissioner. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. So moving on to the public hearings this evening, Johnson Ridge will be first. This is a request for a planned unit development concept review on 2.1 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 2.1 acres, zoning change from R1-22 to R1-9.5 on 2.1 acres, preliminary plat on 2.1 acres. Will the proponent of the project please come forward? Good evening. If you would state your name and spell it for the record and tell us about your project, please.
Harold Worrell, Harold Worrell. You've got the presentation up. So as I said, my name's Harold Worrell, and I'm here today to speak about 9995 Bennett Ridge. Bennett Place. We call it Johnson Ridge. I'm here as the applicant on behalf of Laketown Builders. The property is located roughly 2.6 miles south of Eden Prairie Center. It's south of Pioneer Trail and 1.5 miles west of 169. The site provides easy access for commuting, shopping, and amenities. And it's surrounded currently by single-family homes. Some basic information. The property is L-shaped, and it's flanked on two sides by a city outlot. As you can see on the existing site conditions survey, if you think of that as an L laying on its back, it's flanked on the two short arms of the L. Sorry, I'm flailing my arms about. The land falls within the Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District, which just granted us conditional approval for permit 2021-030. Our proposal, I'll start with the community name, Johnson Ridge. We named it for the family that owned the property for decades. The Johnsons built the home there and pretty much lived out their existence there. Harold Johnson was a war veteran, and a ridge is known as a good defensive position in military terms. So it caters to his history and to the conditions on site with the ridge on the south side of the property. Our property, along with the city outlot, I guess I didn't mention the city outlot really. If you look at the picture on the screen, if you look at what appears to be a cul-de-sac north of the L laying on its back, I don't have a pointer. I didn't know if I was allowed to bring one either. Half of that property there is part of the city's property, known as Outlot C. Roughly half. So we would like to incorporate that, and I'll go down that road here in a minute, for a total development area of 2.25 acres. So the outlot was obtained when the city approved the development for the Moorhead development. Its purpose was to serve as a road for the future development of the property that we now own. And it currently serves as a driveway for 9977 Bennett Place, Mr. Howderman property. You did get brought into this. We're proposing a development of 6 home sites. These home sites will have an average lot area of 13,239 square feet. We, as I mentioned, intend to incorporate the outlot as to be developed as part of our right-of-way and as part of this new city street. Sorry, which will also serve as Mr. Joe Howderman's driveway as well, our neighbor to the north. The existing site conditions in general, the property is wooded with mature trees. It is also heavily covered with buckthorn and invasive tree species. The topography is quite variable. It's the high point of the property is what you can see as the center of the property, right there in front of the existing home. And it drops 38 feet to the southwest or the lower left of the page as it's shown. Currently, there are no swales at the property lines or anything keeping sheet water or runoff from rain within the confines of the site. Precipitation that doesn't absorb into the soil runs off to the south, southwest, and northeast. So the lower left and the upper right. The soil is mostly sandy and a sandy mix. It's technically called Malardy Havoc. I believe I pronounced it right. Midwest Natural Resources was retained for a wetland determination. It was concluded that no wetlands exist. Members of the city came out and concurred with that finding. M&R also researched and reported on endangered species and found no endangered, threatened, or special concern species on site. The existing home is located in the southeast corner of the property there. So for the development and vertical construction, we propose 3 walkout and 3 lookout home sites. That's kind of what the property lends itself to. We would incorporate water retention ponds, proposed dry ponds, and swales at the property lines to direct and filter the water before it's sent back through. Retaining walls will accommodate the grade between the existing adjacent home, the Moorheads, and the street at Bennett. You have an elevation where the street would enter from Bennett, and then you have the Moorheads, and it's slightly tricky area where those meet. And then also at the also at the pond to accommodate our dry pond to filter the water. We've incorporated sustainability features. I would say probably the main sustainability feature would be electric vehicle ready garages. I think that's kind of where we're headed. And the proposed development, we're proposing a PUD, a planned unit development. So, comprehensive plan. So the land is guided low-density residential. Our proposal of the 6 lots, based on the quantity of land and the size of the property, actually meets this criteria. But our proposal for the development of a PUD 995 with waivers is based kind of on the contours and what the site is giving us as well. So if you look up, we are requesting some waivers, both for width at the right-of-way for the bulb of the cul-de-sac. I believe minimum, correct me if I'm wrong, is 55 feet. We have some narrow lots at the right-of-way, but they open up fairly expansively just beyond that. If we go to a previous aerial photo. Also, we're requesting one for lot number 3 is 91.96 feet deep. It's actually larger than that as opposed to the 100, but it's actually larger than that other than the fact that one side of it cuts into the bulb of the cul-de-sac. And the grade of the street, we're requesting that be allowed a maximum of 9.11, which, Sarah, I believe that's 1.11 greater than is currently standard. Is that correct? I'm sorry. Yeah. So our community plan is a combination of 1- and 2-story homes. Individual homes will vary in architecture, materials, and colors. These homes could range in size from an 1,800 square foot rambler with an unfinished basement to a 5,000 square foot 2-story home. The lot sizes are variable. I think that's kind of my understanding is part of the reason for a planned unit development is diversity and interest in architecture and variation. As far as the community, there was a large community turnout to the community meeting. This shows us that the community is engaged and involved and actually really care about the community, not just what happens within the confines of their home. And it tells us it's exactly where we want to be as builders and small infill developer. We'd like to request, upon the success of this evening, to start grading as soon as possible. We would like to have the first lift of asphalt down in November. I'm sorry, I'm primarily looking this way, but. Thank you all for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you. Any initial questions for Mr. Worrell?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Farr?
Thanks. So I noticed one of your goals is to attend to some of the neighbors' requirements for the drainage off to the southwest of the property.
I'm sorry?
One of your goals is to attend to the drainage concerns that the neighbors had down to the south. And so I'm looking at your tree survey plan, and thank you for trying to save as many trees as possible, especially some of those larger heritage trees. Many of them are clustered along that southern property line where the grades just south of the existing home come down to meet your...
I'm sorry, so the existing trees, correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep, thank you. And yet, you're showing that new drain tile system that you mentioned going right through those existing trees, through the root structure. So you can't dig a trench for the drain tile right through the existing mature trees that you're saving. And I'm wondering how you're going to do that.
I actually don't have a copy. I've got a copy of the tree survey, but I don't have a copy of the existing with me.
That's it. The tree survey is a perfect graphic for us.
This is the new one. I don't have it to project, but I can share it with you all if you want to pass it around.
Okay.
Does the overhead cam work, Julie?
This doesn't have the existing trees on it, just the new proposed trees, though.
You've got a document camera.
So drain tile,
Zoom in a little on the document. document camera, please?
Would not be several feet deep, it would be rather shallow.
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I
I'm
understand.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. So I guess
Yeah.
my understanding from what the engineers had proposed is that we don't believe that's going to affect existing trees.
Okay. All right.
Now, I'm not a forester,
Right.
so I can't speak in great detail to that.
Okay. Later after the staff report, I'll ask for staff's professional opinion on that as well. I just didn't know if you were aware of that condition.
Sure, yes.
You are? Okay, okay, all right. So, because this is kind of our one shot to review and approve your tree loss, and part of that tree loss math is, of course, your saving
Sure.
of these wonderfully large trees. Life expectancy of them, if those are compromised, then we're left with an awkward position where it's too late for you to pay cash in lieu of, and it's too late to plant more trees because it's going to be 5 years, then they die, and nobody's going to know it.
Understood.
Yeah, so that, on top of the limit of soil disturbance for your earthwork operations, your limit of disturbance line by your civil engineer comes right up to the trunks of those trees that you're saving. It's not respecting the drip line of the trees where the roots extend to. So you're disturbing up to 50% of the root structure, either by fill or by cut, by a lot of those large trees that you're trying to save, by grading right up to the trunk.
So I apologize, I don't have that copy with me to show the silt fence area and the, do you have a copy of that?
Okay, yeah, I do. We all do. So,
Okay. So I
I
guess,
just wanted to know if you knew that was the condition. This is kind of like a very aggressive tree replacement plan, or
Sure.
tree salvage plan, if you will, because of the two items I talked about, the limit of disturbance going underneath the drip line,
Sure.
and then the trenching of the drain tile, hoping not to get down to root level of any of those trees.
I guess on the earlier plan that I had, it showed the silt fence going around and protecting near the drip line. I wouldn't say that it was right at the drip line. But
Yeah, well, okay. I just want that point to be noted, and
Sure.
maybe we'll take it up. I just wanted
Sure.
to find out what your take was on it.
sure.
Thank you, sir.
So those trees that you see, my pleasure.
Other initial questions for Mr. Worrell? Okay, thanks. You can sit down. We'll go to the staff report, please, Julie.
Mr.
Thank you
Chair- Oh, sorry. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as the applicant reviewed, the request before you this evening is for a PUD concept review, PUD with waivers, zoning district change, and preliminary plat. The property is currently zoned R122. The request is to rezone to R195. That zoning change is consistent with the comprehensive plan, so staff is recommending approval of the zoning change. As the applicant noted, there are several waivers that are being requested through the PUD process, and he gave a very thorough overview of those, so I won't reiterate that to be respectful of people's time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I would like to point out that with regard to the lot width, just expanding a little bit on the applicant's comments, there are portions of the lot that do meet the 100-foot lot depth requirement. There's just a small portion that falls below that 100 feet because of the fact that the cul-de-sac design has to dip into that lot. So it's not a condition that spans the entire lot width. In addition, there is a waiver request with regard to grade on the site. They are proposing to exceed that by 1.11%. Staff is recommending approval of that waiver as well for the reasons noted in your staff report. The lots all conform to the zoning ordinance with the exception of those waivers that were identified, and the development agreement will address the home designs that were discussed by the applicant. It's very typical to include in the development agreement requirements to make sure that essentially that there are monotony controls, so we don't have two houses that look two houses right next door to each other that look the same. Staff is recommending approval of the project subject to the conditions outlined in your staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Julie. Questions for the city? you want to take that?
Mr.
No?
Chair, yeah, if you don't mind, now would be an appropriate time for me to just volley that same question over to staff regarding staff's comment on the risk of the saved trees being lost in the near term based upon the grading close to and underneath the drip line, as well as the trenching for the drain tile.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as Commissioner Farr mentioned, there is some grading that gets pretty close to some of the trees. Fortunately, there are most of them that get close are pretty resilient for root damage. The ones that we would have concern about is definitely kind of the large heritage tree oak and some of the other larger oaks. The other ones are still, they're significant in size, but they're a little bit more tolerant of root disturbance. So there would be a couple of them that we would definitely want to keep an eye on and could hopefully adjust some of the grading in the field to have better success of saving those trees. But like I mentioned, the other ones that get pretty close are pretty resilient to root disturbance. So not an issue with all of them, but definitely some of them. And then as far as the drainage line, to be honest, that was added later and isn't on the tree inventory and the grading plan. It's very difficult to see. So definitely have to take a closer look at that, because that was an oversight, like I said, based on the tree survey and stuff that we have. But definitely would want to keep that either pretty shallow or move it between existing trees as far away from the trunks as we can. So I actually didn't see that until looking at the landscape plan and seeing that on there.
All right. Are there other methods that you know of off the top of your head that we could control runoff down that slope to the neighbor's property without digging a trench and using drain tile? Is there something else, maybe multiple shallower French drains or terracing or et cetera, et cetera?
All of that would most likely require grading, and then you're getting into grading near the trees again.
Yep.
Like I said, it's going to have to be something I look a little bit closer at and look at engineering with on some other methods if there are available methods.
Does city staff provide on-site services during construction when they're taking down trees? If they establish the line of limits of disturbance,
yep.
Do you go out and check for drip line orientation and grading over root balls?
Yep, so that's standard language in our development agreement, where once they put their tree protection and erosion control fence up, that both myself and members of engineering staff go out and inspect that prior to any work being done.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the city at the moment? Okay. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and say a few words for or against this project, please do so now. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. If you would state your name and spell for the record. And
good evening, commissioners. My name is William Havoc. I'm a neighbor of the development living at 9955 Bennett Place. I'm also a real estate attorney, and kind of to stretch it a little bit further, I was appointed to the Eden Prairie Planning Commission in the late 90s by now Mayor Ron Case. So I'm familiar with what you're all going through. My general, and I haven't been involved with the neighbors as much as I'd like. I know there was a lot of concerns expressed. I just wanted to talk briefly that when I was on the Planning Commission, I can't recall a residential situation where we increased the density of a piece of property where it was completely circled. Now, there are situations where we increased the density because there might have been a higher density on one side, but not completely. This parcel is completely circled by the R122. And you're being asked to approve down to R1 9.5. If you're going to increase the density, especially in a residential area, what would be wrong with a compromise at R113 or something like that? Bennett Place is a nice road. It's peace and quiet. You're looking at putting 6 houses in. What about 4? What about 3? Keeping the density somewhat consistent with all 4 sides of the property. Those are just my general comments. I express them because I'm just amazed that there's a request here to reduce the density when there's middle ground or when there's no middle ground, either way. And you folks today are looking at damn near doubling the intensity and the density. So those are my comments. I'm happy to field any questions. I'm on the north side of the property. I don't abut it, but I'm within 500 feet. Okay, any comments?
I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. Havoc.
Pardon me?
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to come forward? Sir. Oh, come first. I'll get you next.
I'm Joe Houterman, Houterman. I live at 9977 Bennett Place. My question is, heritage trees that are in my property and your easement, who's looking out for them? He's only marked heritage trees in the property he has. Just curious, that cul-de-sac's going to come through, do you come through and make sure the drip line and that tree stays, or? I got like a 30-inch oak there in the corner. Just curious.
After we take all the comments, we'll have more discussion about that.
Okay.
So you're on the north side, correct?
Yeah, I'm right on the north. I'm the funny angled lot.
On the
northwest
on the
corner.
bulb side?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, I had the gentleman in the orange next. Good evening. If you'd state your name and spell for the record, please.
Hi, my name's John Kellogg. I'm at 11180 Jackson. I'm immediately behind lot number 1 where the dry pond is going to go. Harold's done a great job. And so I'm here to support him, and I support the 6 properties that he has proposed. I'm a real estate agent. I know the drawbacks of the land with 4 houses. It's hard to make the numbers work, but he's been about as responsive as a person can be. And as long as we keep some of these heritage trees and get the drainage right, I'm all for the project.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Moorhead, Moorhead, and we own a majority of the property on the north end, or the north side of that cul-de-sac. Again, my question is, who is responsible for the trees that are affected by that Outlot C, the development of that Outlot C? We have, several trees along with, I don't think we have any heritage trees, but we do have some, and we're just wondering, should that root system be affected with the development of the cul-de-sac and the trees do not survive, who is responsible then for removing the trees? We know that there's a possibility that they won't survive, and they're not that big, but we just don't want to have to be responsible for the removal of those should that happen, should that be affected. And the other issue is the height of the retaining wall. That's going to affect our driveway, because our driveway is a big portion of what comes off Bennett. And we understand that the grading involved is going to involve quite a height difference in the way the grading is right now, and how that'll affect the retaining wall and everything else, and how we access our driveway. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and offer comments?
There's one other thing. On that Outlot C right now, there is an existing fire hydrant. And we're also concerned, we aren't aware of where our city municipal utilities are and if they are affected or if those are included in Outlot C.
All right, would anyone else like to come forward? Seeing no one, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing and just continue the discussion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion for Commissioner Marcos. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second for Commissioner Gooding. All those in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. All right. Few questions. I don't know if, did you want to tackle some of those questions we heard from the public?
Yeah, I can make the first attempt. So Chair, members of the Commission, as I mentioned previously, yes, we do go out and inspect the tree protection fence, erosion control for the entirety of the site. So the trees that would be inside of Outlot C obviously would be lost due to the construction of the road or the cul-de-sac, but anything on the adjacent properties, we would be looking at making sure that we have enough clearance for those, and that was basically kind of the reason for the retaining wall, was to minimize grading onto adjacent properties, kind of making sure everything stays on that south side. So that'll definitely be something that we would look at once the tree protection fence is put in, how much room we have and where we can maybe hopefully adjust if needed. So that's definitely something that we look at.
Were there any initial concerns when you reviewed the plan regarding that?
You know what? Until it's actually out there and staked, to get an exact location, no. But obviously, stuff comes up as we're reviewing it, and changes are made in the field.
Commissioner Farr.
Mr. Chair, on the tree survey, there are trees noted within Outlot C, and I'm not sure if it's the city parcel or the south half of the cul-de-sac road extension, but those are numbered and tabulated on the tree survey plan already. There was a question by one of the speakers wondering why they aren't being accounted for, but I believe they are being accounted for in the math for tree replacement. Can you confirm that?
Yes. So any tree in that area that the road is that have been surveyed are significant trees that are being replaced in the replacement. There is not anything north of kind of the on private property, I would say. So that would be stuff that we'd be looking to minimize impact. But anything in the roadway, just like any development, whether it's going to be city property or private property, is included in the survey and replaced.
Yep. That's what I thought. Thanks for that clarification. And then to Mrs. Moorhead comment about maybe something north of that, and I think you just answered this, north of the new road. I see a 28-foot wide temporary construction easement north of the cul-de-sac construction, apparently on her private property, if she lives at the 9969 Bennett Place. Is that what I understand? Okay, and so has that temporary construction easement been approved by the city and the neighbor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, according to the plan submitted to us, that's an existing easement. There's a document number, so there's a recorded easement. And I'd guess it's a permanent easement, not a temporary. We have not reviewed that document, but there is an easement there that exists.
Yep. One of the notes says easement, and the second note says temporary construction easement, so I'm unclear as to what it is. But more to the point, I just want to make sure that the property owner is aware of that, and I'm not sure if the builder wants to say anything about his use of that property during construction or not, but I just want to make sure there aren't any misunderstandings about the use of that during construction.
Mr. Worrell, would you mind coming up and addressing that, please?
glasses anyway. The Moorheads and I had originally discussed possibly some grading going into their yard. At that point, we didn't have a plan as to where exactly it would go, and it would affect their driveway, so we would need to do work on their driveway. So that would be part of the temporary construction to get the grading where we needed to go, and for the grid work that has to happen with the retaining wall.
So I don't want to get between two parties. I'm just, for our planning commission purposes, we're going to make the assumption that you can work out an agreeable solution to both parties. And I don't know if the city needs to intervene or not, if there's a disagreement. All right. It's okay by everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Good, thank you.
Other questions, discussion items?
Mr. Chair, I have a simple question for Harold.
Commissioner Sanctus?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell, would you mind coming up again, please?
Good evening, Mr. Morrell.
Good evening, sir.
Simple question initially.
Uh-oh.
The home, is it the Johnson Homestead on the southeast corner of this proposed redevelopment site? Does it have any heritage value or historical value?
We are not aware of any historical value other than what I've mentioned. And I like history, so to me the history is the Johnsons owned the property for decades, and he was in the military, so we wanted to honor them and that heritage. But I know of no significant historical heritage on that property. In fact, the property to the south actually is more dense than R122, and those homes were actually cut into a hill, which has created Johnson's Ridge. So that actually was a far steeper slope long ago. And during the community meeting, I referred to it as Johnson Island, because he really is on a high point of the property, which was significantly developed around. And I would make the statement, where was the gentleman that made the comment about going to R122 when Mr. Johnson was there on his property alone with a farm next to him? But there was a large, long-held farm to the south. And I believe the property owner of that also owned the barn that was donated, which is over by Flying Cloud Airport now, but I don't know that for sure. Okay, so Sally Brown and the Brown's farm is what the property was. But if I could take you out there, the Harold Johnson and Viola Johnson's son showed me where the property used to go, and it was a very gradual slope, 2 blocks to the south where existing trees currently are, old growth trees, and he said it was a swamp over there or a wetland. And he used to slide forever down the hill, which is now the gradient that we have that you see today. So I wouldn't believe there, with that type of grading that was done, that there would be any kind of heritage or significant history.
So the farm dates back to around the turn of the century, 1900 or thereabouts? To the best of your knowledge?
I would have to have you educate me on that, sir.
One question I have is, in the process of excavation, what would be the plan if you came across a buried thresher, or you came across other farm implements that were impacted in the soil, subsoil?
Buried treasure?
Yeah.
Well, first I'd do a happy dance, probably.
Okay.
And then I'd call you.
Okay.
We understand that there are certain rights and things that can... I was a construction manager. Actually, when I was putting myself through college, I was building boulder retaining walls over on a ridge not too far away, and we came across some bones, and so the project stopped. So I'm familiar with that, and I know we need to, if we find anything, we need to stop what we're doing and get advice. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, get advice from whom?
Well, the government. I don't know what entity to start with. I think probably either the state or federal level, if it's something like a treasure, like you're saying.
Okay.
Oh, Julie.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, if I can address Commissioner DeSanctis' comment to a degree. The city does have, through its work with the Historic Preservation Commission, properties that have been designated as historic properties. And I believe there's 6 or 7 of those that actually have that designation. In addition to those properties, there's a list of properties or an inventory of properties that the city keeps an eye on because they might have historical significance because of the type of architecture or the type of building materials that have been used on those properties. And in those cases, when those properties develop, what we typically do is we go out and do some photo documentation, or we collect samples, of the materials. This property is not on that historic inventory. We certainly check as a part of doing any infill development in particular to make sure that we're watching for those properties.
That's reassuring, Julie. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Just 2 things. One of the people who came up to speak did, in fact, ask us point blank about the increased density of zoning 360 around this parcel. And staff did do a pretty good job, I think, in the staff report to identify precedents. Could I ask staff maybe just to underscore the information you had under guiding and zoning on page 1 of the staff report regarding upzoning?
Absolutely. I'm just looking for a visual so that I can share on the document camera.
Sure.
So you can see on the document camera the kind of light brown property with the dark outline. That is Johnson Ridge as it's proposed. It is currently zoned R122. That's what that light brown color indicates. The remaining properties around that, predominantly that are the sunshine yellow color, are R113.5 zoning. And then as you move to the east, you get into some of the medium density type of zoning districts that are a little bit more dense than what is being proposed. So to Commissioner Farr's comments about the precedent with zoning, the R195 zoning district is one that is being utilized much more frequently in the last few years than it had been say 10 years ago because it supports the type of housing that is identified as one of the city's priorities through the comprehensive plan, looking out to 2040 and creating more diverse housing stock within the city. So in the past couple of years, there's been several developments, not only new developments that have come in kind of on the outskirts where there are outskirts in Eden Prairie, but also infill development sites that have been rezoned to R195 because the density allowed in that low density land use category in the comprehensive plan is up to 5 acres. This is consistent with that. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have if I didn't do a thorough job on that answer.
I loved it. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate that. And one more comment. Since the applicant volunteered his previous employment history as a retaining wall contractor or project manager, if I could ask him to clarify the graphics on the landscape plan with the differentiation of 2 retaining wall styles that you have shown around the 2 ponds, northeast and southwest. There are ovals shown for the retaining wall graphic, which to me implies a natural boulder retaining wall. Very nice looking. We like those. I like those personally. And yet on the north edge of the cul-de-sac, there are some rectangular retaining wall units implied, like a pre-manufactured something. Could you tell us what and why?
Actually, the project in construction management was for home building. I was a laborer with retaining walls. But I can answer your question, sir.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So the roundish type are designating boulders. The square are designating some type of engineered wall system.
Okay, is that at the city's direction because that's on city right-of-way property?
Well, we know that it is in the code or ordinance that it's supposed to be keystone. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's in response to what you think the city wants.
I'm sorry?
So it's in response to what you think the city wants.
Honestly, I don't recall if it was a response or if the engineers originally had done that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that. You know where I'm going next.
Should I stay?
Nope.
Okay.
I won't go too far, though.
If I could just get a response from staff on that in terms of the adequacy of a modular retaining wall. Keystone is a brand name. Others like that, the life expectancy of that, and the visual impact versus boulders on the rest of the development.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, city walls, we do not allow boulder walls within city right-of-way. As you mentioned, yeah, they are probably more aesthetically pleasing, but their structural integrity we don't trust, I guess, in a city wall. So most of our walls in city right-of-way are designed walls. He mentioned Keystone. Those are modular block walls. We also probably prefer the big block walls. They're much more reliable than the smaller block, dry cast, if you will, which is our smaller block walls. So our specs still allow the dry block walls, but that may change with a desire or requirement that all future walls be the wet cast or big block walls.
That's good to hear. I would support that change in the very near future, personally. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Other questions or discussion items? Like one thing, Rod, could you touch on, there's mention of a fire hydrant concerns. Are you aware of a fire hydrant somewhere in there that needs to be reviewed?
Yes, sir. There's an existing fire hydrant right, appears to be right by Outlot C, which is right in the middle of the road or right within the road corridor. These plans are difficult to read sometimes. But that fire hydrant there's an arrow shown there that hydrant is going to be salvaged and provided to the city, and then there's a new hydrant provided at the end of the cul-de-sac. So basically that one will be abandoned. And the extension of the water main actually is using that hydrant lead to extend the sewer or extend the water to the east.
Thank you. Other question? Anyone have comments about the project? Or?
Mr. Chair, I'll just speak my opinion. As we all know, most of the development in Eden Prairie right now is infill development, and it's sometimes less than ideal, but needs to be representative of what we want in the community, consistent with our long-term plans, and consistent with the neighborhood. And my evaluation in looking at this property is that the developer is doing a pretty good job of meeting those requirements, of making it consistent with the surrounding community. Yes, the R1 9.5 versus R1 a little bigger is a difference, but from what I have seen, from what I have seen in Eden Prairie with the cost of land and cost of houses and all, it would be difficult to make development of a plot like this work on a smaller number, right? So I personally support this and believe that it's a reasonable infill development that fits the desire for being consistent and yet the economics of what's going on right now. So I'm in support of this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. Other comments or thoughts?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Fern.
Yep. I'm going to go along with that and just put a little punctuation on the waivers that are requested for a minimum lot depth, minimum lot width, and maximum street grade. I support those waivers. I think staff did a good job of evaluating those pros and cons, and I don't see any difficulties approving those waivers. I think the architecture of the homes is something that they're going to offer enough variety so that it won't look like the standard same boxes down the street. So I'm in favor of that. I've already expressed my concern about the drip line of the trees and the drainage on the southwest part of the property, and I think staff's heightened awareness and the developer's heightened awareness about that issue will have to just reach mutually agreeable solutions out there in the field if needed to keep the neighbors happy and to make sure that those trees live the rest of their life that we want them to. So I'm in favor of the project as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Farr, other comments?
I would like
Commissioner
to, yes, sir. I would like to weigh in, looking at this project in toto. I agree with Commissioner Kirk that it conforms more or less to the existing and prevalent immediate community in terms of architecture, I would assume, and in terms of the affordability issue. I, for a long time, have been very concerned about how these infill developments continue to replicate the model of high-end homes. Now, while I understand the economic reality, I also, it puts me in a position where I feel lukewarm about this proposal, despite all the due diligence that the developer has presented to us. Again, I sigh, my heart sighs, when I see that homes will be starting in the $800,000 range and up. And I heard the developer say that one of the homes would be a single-story Rambler. Ramblers are in high demand, yes. But again, from the principle of affordability, this is a setback. So my approval or my support for this project is lukewarm.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanctus. Commissioner Higgins.
I have listened with a mix of emotions because on some points I think it would have been wonderful to have not had to do as much work to kind of carve in the cul-de-sac and everything else and find the different sizes of plots to put together with the homes that you want to build. On the other hand, going past that property a couple of times now, I know something needs to happen. I think this is thoughtful. I am also equally kind of mixed emotions because we have not done as much as we would like to see happen, but this isn't where we can make it happen, I don't think. A more affordable blend of units. First of all, there are so few to be built. Second of all, what's already there. But I do think it's going to be very deliberately careful work that's going to have to go into this change. I was amazed at the steep grade of some of that land. I wanted to sort of go up and go in it, but it wasn't my land. But it's still, I know the neighbors have had their, setting there for some time, and it is a significant change. And so I know it's a challenge to get that done, but I think it's the one that will work, and so I'm going to support it.
Commissioner Marcos?
Yeah, I think everything you guys have been saying, Commissioner Kirk and Commissioner Farr, I kind of second or third what you guys mentioned. I support this development. I think we've gone over many of those points, so I don't want to berate that. But I will just say that I think it sounds like the developer and the neighbors have already been meeting and you guys have had conversations. I hope that continues, and I'm kind of speaking to the developer, make sure that they understand exactly what you plan to do. Sounds like maybe there's a little confusion on what the retaining wall might look like or where that's going to fall, and maybe you can do another site walk now that you have firmer plans and really talk that through with the neighbors and make sure their concerns are heard, because you're going to be there for a while and this is their future and this is their property. So I think that sets a good tone for the people that are going to be moving in here too. So that's my comment.
Commissioner Gooden?
Well, I don't know that I can really add a lot. I'm in support. I'm following the other commissioners and pretty much agree with what they said. I think it was a well laid out plan. Most of the neighbors that are here seem to support it in one way or another. Has a few questions, and that's a bit unusual here lately. And the affordable housing issue is important, but I don't know how on this property it could apply. So I'm in favor of this, and I think it will be a good project.
Thank you. And I would echo what everyone said up here. I support the project, but especially what Commissioner Marcos said, if you could continue to work with the neighbors and make sure you're helping preserve those trees and address their concerns, would be appreciated. So, no other discussion, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to recommend approval for a planned unit development concept review on 2.1 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 2.1 acres, zoning change from R122 to R1 9.5 on 2.1 acres, and a preliminary plat on 2.1 acres based on plans stamped dated July 30th, 2021, and the staff report dated August 9th, 2021.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Marcos. All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? All right. Congratulations, your project moves forward. Moving on, we have two more public hearings this evening. Next up is 6245 Duck Lake Road, Building Move 2021-10. This is a request for a building move on an existing garage from 17117 62nd Street West to 6245 Duck Lake Road. Will the requester please come forward? Good evening. If you would, state your name and spell it for the record and tell us about your project, and thanks for bearing with us with the agenda flip.
Sure. Thanks for working through everything tonight. My name's Josh Hohn, Josh, last name Hohn. My project's very different from that one. So I live at 6245 Duck Lake Road, right on the north central edge of Eden Prairie. My wife and I built our house there back in 2009 and have lived there ever since, and are raising our 3 kids there, and love the neighborhood, love Eden Prairie, love everything about being here. Unfortunately, recently our neighbor to the north at the property, the 17117, passed away this spring, who was our neighbor the entire time that we've been there. And so what we have the opportunity to do is purchase his property. We're in a purchase agreement with the family trust to purchase his property next door. And here today to ask the Commission's approval to move it's kind of a 2-part transaction. One, to do a lot line adjustment, which we're currently working through with Sarah Strain in the city, and then subsequent to that, pick up and move the existing detached garage from the property and move it down to the lot line that we would assume once we adjust the property line. So steps that have taken place so far, you can see a little overhead here. This is a shot from the property back towards my house, so you guys can get a visual of where the garage would move. That's my house in the foreground, kind of the taupe-colored house. It's the 3-stall garage there that would essentially move, about 75 feet or so closer to my house. No trees, nothing in the way of the move. Essentially, there's a birdhouse and a little chain link fence dog kennel there that would have to be removed. But so essentially, hire a contractor to, obviously pour a new foundation, do a little bit of dirt work, and hire a company. I've spoken with the professional building moving company that could potentially move the company. Also had the City of Eden Prairie inspector come out to inspect the garage to ensure its structural integrity. Both of them agreed it's a prime, just a prime property or garage to be moved, and a pretty easy move to do so. So picking it up, moving it over to the new foundation, and then subsequent to that, there's a view of the garage there. I just thought I'd add that just to let you know the shingles, everything on it is brand new. They almost basically match the shingles on our house exactly. And then subsequent to moving the garage, what we would have to do, there's a view of our house kind of back towards the other house as well. We would then, of course, have to provide a single-family garage for the existing house that's there. And 2 options there. You can kind of see that shed that was in the pictures. That could function as that single-family garage. I need to decide if financially that makes sense to move that structure, or if I would just, buy a new small 1-unit garage and place it where the existing garage is now. So have had a professional survey done, have reviewed the lot line for make sure that we don't have any easement issues with where the lot line adjustment would be. Certainly have had the utility companies come out to take a look and make sure that we're not going to have any issues. All of that has been passed, and enjoyed working with the city. They've been very, very supportive as we've talked through the plans.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Holm.
Sure.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner
Sorry.
Farr.
You're calling this a garage. You already have a 3-car garage attached to your house, and this is another 3 cars.
Yep.
So either you're a car collector, or maybe you want this as a nice shop building, but it continues to, I think it's called an accessory structure in our zoning code. I don't know if you know, but have you been told that you need to extend a bituminous driveway to the 3 doors of your garage? Or are you just going to have this sitting out in landscaping? I really don't care to ask you what the use is going to be, what you intend to use it, but of the pictures that were shown to us, it looks like a nice little indoor shop area.
Yeah.
But you may want to put vehicles in it. I don't care. But now there's going to be 6 cars on your lot, 6-car garage.
Yeah. Can you ask the question about the bituminous area again? I didn't quite catch.
Are you going to put a driveway to this new garage location?
Yeah, so it would Y off of our existing driveway up to where the garage would be next to our other garage. A big part of this is to give us the opportunity to, I don't know if you're familiar with Duck Lake Road, it's a very busy road. It's not a road that lends itself well to having kids out playing in the driveway. This would be a really nice opportunity for us to have a structure with the pad of cement that would be considerably further away from Duck Lake, where, whether it's a basketball hoop or just a chance to play hockey, that type of thing. Certainly that's a nice opportunity. And then obviously the garage space to use. But yes, we would have to take the driveway, Y off of our driveway up to that garage.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Holm.
Sure.
So now we'll go to the city's planners report, please. Julie?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the request before the commission as a part of this application is requesting authorization of being able to issue a moving permit. So as the applicant stated, in great detail there, or in good detail, I should say, there is a pending application to review an administrative lot line adjustment. That is a separate process. The Planning Commission is not being asked to weigh in on that, rather just on the moving permit. There are 4 criteria outlined in code that are reviewed as a part of any moving permit, and Mr. Hone spoke to those with regard to structural integrity, fitting in with the characteristics of the neighborhood, and reviewing information with regard to the building permit process. So there have been multiple individuals, both from city staff and third parties, that have been out and reviewed those. Staff does find that those criteria are met in order to be able to issue a moving permit, so long as the conditions that are outlined in the lot line adjustment will be met. So there will be a little bit of tie-in from a timing perspective with regard to the lot line adjustment as well. So staff is recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for the city? All right. Commissioner Farr.
Sorry to ask me so many questions tonight. The property to the north is served by 2 driveways, one off Duck Lake Road and one off West 62nd Street. Staff, could you comment on the continued approval or use of 2 access points for a single-family home, and whether or not the loss of a garage and the rebuilding would have that issue come into question?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as part of the internal staff review of these applications that have been brought forward, staff has reviewed that, and as the applicant noted, he will be providing a new existing enclosed parking structure on that northerly lot, and that does not impact the existing 2 driveways that provide access to this site. Certainly, we do have other properties in Eden Prairie that may have two curb cuts, sometimes on the same street frontage. If you've got a horseshoe type driveway, that's not necessarily ideal and not the norm, but it does happen from time to time on certain properties. So not out of the ordinary, but something certainly that staff did review.
Okay, great. That northeast driveway extension I was referring to has a considerable amount of property that, or length that is off his property on what I assume would be city right-of-way. Is that something that the city pays to plow for him?
There's, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that's the old 62, and I believe that's all private. There is a portion that's I don't have a visual, but I believe there is a portion of that the city maintains to the curb line, but then there's a driveway that is privately maintained. Well, thanks, Julie. Yep. So you can see right the curve there of West 62nd Street is what the city maintains, and the portion that comes off of that curve section is privately maintained.
Okay, even though it's not on private property.
Correct.
All right, thank you. And Julie, last question from me. Is it okay for a single-family lot to have a 6-car garage?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, staff has reviewed that as well. The city does have requirements with regard to the amount of lot area accessory structures can occupy, and with the lot line adjustment, this will meet that standard.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Other comments, questions? This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against this project, please do so now. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
A motion from Commissioner Higgins to close public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Commissioner Sanctus. All those in favor of closing public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. Further discussion or comments? Yeah, Commissioner.
I guess I'll just add that I appreciate that you're reusing this large garage rather than building new and building a smaller garage to supplement, because he could go and build a 3-car garage as a bonus space anyways. So I think that's a good reuse of materials, and I appreciate that. So I don't see anything to not support this.
Other comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to authorize the issuance of the building moving permit based on plan state stamp dated July 12, 2021, and the information and conditions of authorization provided in the staff report dated August 9, 2021.
For motion of Commissioner Gooding, do I have a second?
I will second the motion of Commissioner Gooding.
Second from Commissioner Sanctus. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? All right. Carries. Good luck. I put my hockey board hat and just make a plug that have your kids practice hockey back there. We need more numbers. That'd be great. Nice job presenting tonight. Good luck.
Nice job.
All right. Moving on this evening.
Maybe you can offer practice space for it.
Yes. Moving on this evening with one more public hearing. 775 Prairie Center Drive, BOA 2021-02. Request for monument sign height of 10 feet 2 inches. City code maximum is 8 feet. Monument sign area of 56 square feet. City code maximum is 50 square feet. Good evening. Thanks for being patient this evening. Technical difficulties and an agenda flip. We appreciate it. Would you mind stating your name and spelling for the record and telling us about your project?
Certainly. My name is Rick Ferraro, and the spelling of the last name is F as in Frank, E-R-R-A-R-O. I'm here tonight on behalf of Spectrum Sign Systems. We are representing the ownership group for the building and seeking to update and upgrade the existing monument sign at 775 Prairie Center Drive. With the recent construction of the light rail, it has added to some of the obstruction there. Currently, the existing monument sign is a low-profile monument sign. What we're proposing is a slightly elevated sign that we think will assist in landmarking the entrance to the building and just making that parking lot entrance a little bit more visible. I think that our request here is reasonable. You know what? We didn't want to come in and ask for something that was double of the sign code, but something that, was going to be reasonable and would serve the function of the sign in landmarking the building and identifying the tenants. The setback will remain as is, which does meet the code. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Ferraro?
I do.
Commissioner Sands.
Yes. Mr. Ferraro, I have two questions. When you examine Exhibit C perspective showing a southeast view, the light pole seems to be on the right-hand side to be northeast, well northeast of the existing monument. When you look at Exhibit D, the light pole looks like it's in front, looking north. So I'm trying to understand how it could be where it's positioned in Exhibit C, but in Exhibit D, it shows it being actually on the other side, the south side of the monument sign. Does everyone see that? No. If you look at Exhibit C, that's the existing sign, correct? With the red arrow? I see a light pole just northeast of it, looking south. When I look at Exhibit D, I see the light pole looking north on the opposite side.
So, Julie, I don't
I'm
know
not sure what
that
Exhibit C
is part of this packet. I think that is part of the variance packet. This was the PowerPoint. I think the arrow is indicated on the council's packet.
Okay. Anyway, it just appears to be incongruous.
Pardon?
It appears to be incongruous. The position of the light pole, because the way the light pole looks when you look northwesterly, it's on this side or the south side. So when you go to the south perspective, it seems to be on the north side.
Yes.
Others see that?
Mr. Chairman, I think I can address that. It looks like there are two different light poles. So one's north of the sign and one's south of the sign.
Okay.
Different.
Okay, because the one looking southeasterly, you don't see a pole anywhere adjacent to the monument.
If you look on Exhibit C, where the light pole is, you can see a light pole in the distance. I think the other perspective, that's in the foreground.
Okay, so it got compressed in the photograph. Okay.
And then, yeah,
it just
again, in
appeared,
Exhibit D, you can see the light in the background.
Like it violated reality. The other question I have for you is, I saw the proposed design, it's a monolith, essentially. The existing one, I think, is a bit more stylized. So I'm wondering what thought and discussion went into the exact final proposed form for the sign?
Well, that's a great question. I think we were looking for an updated architectural look that was going to tie in more with the building, and I don't think that the existing sign, respectfully, serves any purpose or any affiliation with the building right now. I think this is much more of an updated and professional look.
So conforming to the architecture of the building, more so than...
More of a tie-in than a swale or a partial radius, if you will.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, Commissioner Gooding.
I get the idea of updating the sign. I don't, after going over there and looking at it, I don't see what it's going to do for you for helping people identify it. It's going a little higher.
It is.
But it's not going to make it, I don't see how it's going to aid in standing out for somebody driving up and picking up that sign. It's a little...
The old one.
I just don't see it. I get you might want to update it architecturally, but I don't see how it helps in wayfinding.
Right. Well, Mr. Commissioner, we were trying to come up with, a reasonable sign size and, respect to the code and try to help enhance things a little bit more on the site. And our owners and our designers arrived at this outcome here.
Okay. Yeah, one of the major things for a sign is to help in wayfinding, and the one there really doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
It does not. I agree with that.
No,
And I don't know that this is.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the desired outcome here is function.
Yeah.
100%. We think this does elevate that.
Okay.
It's a busy road, and with the obstruction of the light rail now, I think you would need 100 square foot sign.
Well, Mr. Farrar, if I may interject again, what is the font size or the lettering size with the new proposed monument versus the existing? This kind of piggybacks on Commissioner Gooding's comment. What I'm thinking about is people tend to go easily 40 miles an hour or more on that road. And, people who need diagnostic imaging sometimes have problems with their brain and their eyes. So what I'm wondering is what utility there would be in the proposed lettering.
So the proposed character heights are going to be between 5 and 6 inches. And for every inch of character height, you get about 30 feet of visibility with good font selection and good color contrast.
Right. You're satisfied with the color contrast at all different times of day?
100% satisfied with color contrast.
It's been assessed in morning light, noon light, and evening light.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Farrar?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner
I'm just going to opine further. As long as the subject came up, it warrants just a deeper dive. Our zoning metric of sign square footage is misplaced. It's all about intelligibility, visibility of the sign at a given speed limit, visibility from a certain distance, period. I don't care how big the sign is, how small the sign is, it can draw your attention to it. But this sign request is going from a 4-tenant sign to a 6-tenant sign. Okay, so they're adding 2 more tenant name opportunities to it. Tenants to be named, it says on the sign package. So that's 50% more messaging that the traveler will have to observe and read. Their brain may not totally understand what they're comprehending, but the brain is being asked to figure that all out going 40 miles an hour. And so the decrease in font size that Commissioner Gooding pointed out, in combination with the additional messaging, is causing the brain to work harder given at the same rate of speed. So that would, whether that's a safety hazard, I'm not going that far, but the square footage of the sign is a moot point. It's what the brain is being asked to do at a certain speed. And the contrast in letter aids in the intelligibility of picking up those letters. So I'm happy that, Commissioner Gooding picked up on that nuance of the smaller letter height. More importantly to me is if in fact this is for assisting in wayfinding, the darn address should be top and center in the largest font possible, because everybody knows where you're going with an address, but you may not know that the building name that the tenant is in is called Flagship Corporate Center. People typically don't put that on their business card or on their marketing literature. I bank here, and the bank doesn't say anything about Flagship Corporate Center. So I don't have a problem personally with the square footage, and we can debate that after the public hearing is over. But I just wanted to opine a little bit about the observations that other commissioners have made about font size and intelligibility of those letters and the messaging that goes along with that, as opposed to the square footage of the sign.
Again, further corollary to that is when I asked you about sunlight and visibility and discernibility at different times of day, you also have to consider seasonal factors. So in the winter, the sun angle will be about 25 to 30 degrees above the southern horizon, and people are driving southeast. How palpable will those lettering be at 40 miles per hour?
Did you want me to answer that?
I guess my thinking is, okay, what?
Well, here's how I would answer that.
Yeah.
I would say, with consideration to a sign design, we do take daytime viewing into consideration as well as nighttime viewing, and we are looking for that contrast. And I think essentially you have a black and white sign, you don't get any better contrast than that.
I just want to brief comment. I just think this is the right approach from the point of view of the fact that the enormity of light rail structure overhead and coming along Prairie Center Drive is so extreme. And that's not the way to say it, because we wanted to see light rail come, and so that's the way it's going to have to come. But I think as a result of this is the black and the positioning and the height. It worked. I think it'll work. That's just my bias.
Commissioner. I'd like to build on what Commissioner Higgins has said. First off, I think that we need to give the client in this proposal the benefit of the doubt, given the magnitude of the development on the light rail. In other words, light rail has made it identifying this building more difficult. So I think as a planning commission, this is a great place to allow some flexibility beyond the strict standards. So I support that completely. Secondly, I'm going to disagree slightly with some of my colleagues, because I think it's, as long as it doesn't impact the safety of our community, I think the design is theirs to make. And I actually like this design a little better than the previous design. So to me, it's kind of a, it's in the eye of the beholder. And since the client and the designer are working together and this is what they want, as long as it doesn't have a huge impact on safety and all, if they make a mistake, they're probably going to want to change it at some point in time if people can't find the building. And I don't think, I don't see that as our function too much. I think it's great to point it out and speak to the opinions and just bring it up, but in the end, I think it's their call. But given the approval of this proposal, I'm strongly in favor of it, because I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt, given how the landscape has changed so radically that they're being faced with right now.
Well, can I just interject 1 second? Why don't we go to the planner's report and go to public hearing and let Mr. Farrar sit down, and then we can discuss the project. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, will you do the planner's report?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So the variance request before you tonight is twofold. The first variance request is with regard to the request for additional sign height, a little over 10 feet as opposed to the 8 feet that is required by code. And then also a variance to increase the square footage size from 50 square feet to 56 square feet for the sign. As a part of statutory requirements, variances are required to meet a three-part test. As outlined in your staff report, that three-part test is met. There's consistency with the comprehensive plan. It's in harmony with the adjoining properties, and staff has prepared findings to that effect in your staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but it sounds like you've asked a few of them already. But I'm happy to answer any more.
Billy?
Commissioner Sanctus.
Yeah. One question. Does the sign constructor need a variance, for example, for the evening or nighttime perspective to have LED lights, kind of spotlights, surrounding it to enhance the visibility of the sign in the evening?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, there is no variance required for lighting. The only variance request the commission is asked to weigh in on is the height and the square footage.
Other questions for the city? Yes.
Not a question. I just want to clarify. I was not questioning the need to make the change. And I happen to agree with Commissioner Kirk, is that it's your job to design it. I'm not sure it's going to work, but you need to do something, and I don't see anything really wrong with this. In the sense, I would support it, but whether it actually accomplishes what you want or not, I would question.
Maybe why don't we just go to the public hearing? Close that.
Okay.
We can have discussion. All right. Yeah. Open a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against this project, please do so now. Seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Commissioner Farr, motion's closed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Higgins. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public hearing's closed. Commissioner DeSanctis.
Out of curiosity, Mr. Farrar, did you consider putting lighting around the sign for nighttime viewing? Like LED lights, perhaps spotlights on the sign?
The sign is internally illuminated.
Right.
So
But
the lighting is concealed.
Okay.
So each
Would you mind coming to the mic? So it's being broadcast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the sign is internally illuminated.
Right.
Only the letter characters illuminate.
Okay.
And we find that to be a lot more effective, going back to the contrast conversation, in lieu of having a full transparent white background and having black text on there.
Okay.
So.
All right, that's fair. Thank you.
Bet.
Other discussion items.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Okay, great. Just to tie a bow around this, I am in support of this sign expansion. Also, despite my prior remarks, I want to be very clear about this, that I think that their motivation is not 100% visibility, but maybe 50% visibility and 50% adding more tenant names for the leasability of the building. And I think that's fine. I just want to make sure that we understand that because there's going to be additional messaging out there. And I think that we ought to offer that. I don't think they came right out and asked for it, but I see that they're asking for it. And so I want to acknowledge that fact. And that's okay. We're going to increase the leasability of the building. I think the leasing agents want that to increase the visibility for certain tenants, and that's fine. My soapbox comment before was maybe more of an internal one, because I know the signage ordinance is under consideration or being reviewed, and I hope that we could look at it in a different light in terms of just square footage face, having to do something with the speed at which vehicles are passing and the amount of messaging that's on the sign. Hard to regulate, hard to put into a zoning ordinance. I can appreciate all that, but just the simple square footage metric, I think, is not servicing our city as well as maybe it could. So that's my concern. So if they don't want to put the number of the street address on there, it's their choice. Like Commissioner Kirk said, it's their choice what they want to put on it. I wish we could regulate the amount of messaging, but we can't.
Other comments or discussion? I don't know. I like the sign. I think putting that cap on it kind of draws it out when you kind of highlights it more than just kind of the edge of the rock or whatever that is right there. But I think it looks fine. Maybe if it was retail or something where you're trying to pull people off the street, I think it's more of a destination place. If you're going to the CDI or Old National Bank, I think you probably have it in your GPS and you're just looking for that name. So I don't know. For me, it looks fine to me. I don't want to weigh in too much into Mr. Farrar's business on how he runs it. So that's my thought.
Maybe just as an odd question, maybe for staff again, maybe I should have asked this one after the staff report, but these parking lots are connected between the athletic club on the south and the park on the north, presumably only for emergency vehicle access. It's not, there's no signage telling people that you can do that, but especially during construction, I know that I have been guilty of, and others may have, because I've followed them.
I didn't know that.
So shh, don't tell anybody of the shortcut. Is that something that the city is continuing to promote? Is that cross-connectivity of those three private parcels? Well, I guess one public and two privates.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's not something that we promote, but it definitely is used where even people going to Flagship Corporate Center will turn in off of Technology Drive, go through the park and through, and then with there only being a right in, right out onto Technology Drive, a lot of people in the park will then go out that exit. So now that left turn is open again, it makes it a lot easier to get where you're going. So yeah, it's definitely open. It's all connected for use, but definitely it's not something we promote.
Thank you.
Other discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair. I would like to move to approve variance request number 2021-02 based on information outlined in the staff report dated August 9th, 2021, and findings of final order number 2021-02.
Motion from Commissioner Farr. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Commissioner Kirk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? Okay. Good luck, Mr. Farrar. Thanks. Moving on this evening, we have any planners reports?
Sure.
Any members reports? I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening.
I'll make a motion
to adjourn.
I'll give it to Commissioner Marcos. Move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner thanked us with a second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
We made it.
We did. 2 hours.
I didn't think we could do it.
Yeah, that's right. That half hour doesn't count.
Half hour doesn't.
You get that?
Signature, please.
Oh, anyway.
Oh, you got one.
Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you were up on the
Is that the garage?
North Shore, right?
Yeah, we have a place up there now.